Tier lists are some of the most controversial pieces of content you will find within the FGC, and if all the comments and thoughts about tier lists were ever compiled, we would probably have something longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy on our hands. Hey guys, welcome to another DashFight video, and today we're going to be talking about why tier lists are ultimately toxic. Yes, I said it, tier lists are the most toxic things in the FGC, and we will be much better off without them. If you enjoyed this sort of content where we talk about the pressing issues within the fighting game community, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so that you never miss a video. For news, in-depth articles, guides, and player interviews, you can also head over to DashFight.com to get your fix. I cannot tell you when the first tier list was ever created, and there's no consensus as to when tier lists first became a thing, but what we can say is that they have grown in popularity since the mid-2010s as content on social media became more and more important. Tier lists have been used for everything from animals to rocks, which are inanimate objects, and why would you even have a tier list for that? Anyway, tiers are a hierarchical structure which places the object the creator deems the best in a top tier and, in descending order, ranks the other objects within the context of the topic. Whatever you think about tier lists, you cannot deny that they are quite popular and make for great content for most people. They are particularly popular within the FGC as fighting games lend themselves pretty well to opinionated takes on the perceived strengths and weaknesses of characters. For this reason, it looks like tier lists are here to stay. But how beneficial are they? Sure, it's fun to see what a pro player you look up to thinks about the top characters in the fighting game you play, but when it becomes the gospel and a deterrent to the actual enjoyment of the game, then we have a problem on our hands. We have to examine our relationship with tier lists and ask ourselves if they are important at all. A question I've had to ask myself quite a few times is, why do people like tier lists so much? And the easy answer might just be that it's a lot of fun to talk about the games you love and why you think something is good or bad. It creates a discourse around a topic you're passionate about, and that's always fun. As for why they are important, there are a couple of reasons I have heard and tried to think about a bit. The first thing someone might tell you is that tier lists matter at the top levels. This means that the tier lists put together by top players do carry some weight the higher you go, because these lists are based on personal experience at the summit of the game. Basically, character strength doesn't really matter at lower levels due to two factors. One, people in those levels aren't strong enough to coax the very best out of their characters, and the other is that there are many mechanics that can be abused at lower levels that players don't have the requisite skills to counter. For those at the top of the game, character strength has a lot more merit, and tier lists are a way to rank that and put it to action. You could further argue that tier lists are a simple way to go about the arduous task of picking a character to main in the game. Therefore, if a newbie picks up a fighting game for the first time and is hit with a 40-person roster, it could be a challenge to pick who you want to use. In such an instance, one could argue that a tier list made by a trusted player could be a good way to make a choice or at least see where the character you are partial to sits. Tier lists might be looked at with some distrust, but they do have a sway in terms of game balance. What I mean is that the developers see what people do and listen to what people say. This means that if a character is consistently put at the top of a tier list, developers are more likely to take a closer look at the character. This could lead to the infamous nerf hammer. This could be a good thing as there are broken characters that need to be brought down to earth a little, conversely. However, it could also mean a character that isn't deserving of a nerf gets one. These are all the reasons I can think of why people might consider tier lists to be of any great importance. But do these points move the needle for the importance of tier lists? I don't think so. I think even with all these points, tier lists are still a net negative for the community and potentially harmful for newer members of the community who might still be figuring things out. So why do I think tier lists are toxic? I have three reasons which I'll go over one after the other. The first is that tier lists are incredibly subjective. Sure, you can have a large majority go for one character or the other as being strong, but there's rarely ever agreement as to the position of the one character over another. I can hear you say, but if we go by that logic, everything is sort of subjective. To which I'll say, yes, you're right. However, with most other things, there are viable metrics by which the best is measured against. If you were to talk about the best basketball team, you'll consider the strength of the individual players on the team, and also stuff like how many trophies or tournaments such a team has won. How much money does their merchandise make? All of these things are measurable, and while not everyone on the planet will agree, there is enough consensus to at least be able to state it as a fact. But what metrics do top players use to create tier lists? Some will go in depth with their explanations of the why and how they got to their decision, but these are the exception and not the rule. For the most part, tier lists are opinion and feelings driven by, which is hardly the best way to rank anything. Part of the problem is that tier lists are largely experience driven, and that means that the creator of the tier list might be fooled by a few players who really get the best out of a character and can make the character look stronger than they actually are. On the other hand, this same argument could be used as to characters that are considered weak until someone does something with the character that makes people realize how strong they are. Consider how much Mr. Crimson affected Dhalsim's reputation in Street Fighter V. With no proper context, it is really hard to accept a tier list as objectively viable. The second one is the issue of the mindset it can create. Fighting games are all about improvement. Sure, you're expected to have fun, and not everyone is going to be a tournament genius or anything, but one of the joys of playing fighting games is improving. Not just the character you use, but yourself too. The difficulty here is that tier lists take the focus away from the player and instead places it on the character being used. It is in situations like this that you hear people say rather glibly, hey, just pick a top tier, which is very reductive of the situation. Fighting games are all about problem solving, and a bad matchup is a problem to solve. Can picking a stronger character help? Yes, but it is way more rewarding to figure it out with your character, the same one you have poured all your blood, sweat, and tears into. The tier list mindset can lead to entitlement, people complaining about characters all the time, rather than trying to lab said character and work out their mechanics. No character is unusable, and no character is invincible either. It will always be the skill of a player that really makes a character shine. It is better to go into a match without the idea that you're using a low tier character, then it opens your mind up to solutions rather than constant problems. To make it in the FGC, you need mental strength, and I don't think a tier list encourages that. The next problem about tier lists is that they can sway a player to pick a character they don't really enjoy. One of the amazing things about fighting games is the diverse cast of characters, which means that everyone has a character that speaks to them. Before Street Fighter II, there were basically no fighting games that did this, and the seminal game introduced us to archetypes, and today we have Shotos, Zoners, Grapplers, and so on. Everyone has a character and archetype they prefer. But with tier lists, the pressure to pick a top tier could also mean they pick a character or archetype they do not enjoy in the name of winning. Now, you could argue that if there was $1 million on the line, then sure, pick what will win. But to pick a character you do not enjoy to play with your friends, or even just to progress in the game, that's a real tragedy. On top of that, when you stop enjoying a game, you lose motivation to play, which in turn leads to stagnation. On the other hand, using a character you love and are willing to go all the way with will more likely help you improve your game. And isn't that the entire point of fighting games? And then I'll throw in one much smaller issue. Tier lists are mostly used for content. They're used for social media engagement and to really stir things up. If they didn't pull the numbers that they did, I don't think we'd see as many of them as we do now. So tier lists are toxic, but if we don't have them, what should people focus on? Improvement. Who cares if some matchup chart says that a match is unwinnable? You can make it possible. If a Zangief can qualify for Capcom Cup, then for Pete's sake, you can move up to the next rank with your trash tier character. You've made it this far. Don't let anyone invalidate your belief in your character. Prove them wrong, make them eat crow. Know that you are not alone. All around the world, there are people using your character and making it work. You can too. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone who has watched this far, and if you like what you see, check out our website for the latest on the FGC and the games you love. What are your opinions on tier lists? Do you think that they're good or bad? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.